Hi everyone, I am Giuliana Rotola. I'm a PhD student in space law and space sustainability. I work on integrating indigenous outlooks in international space law, so I've been spending a little bit of time in Canada working on First Nations law, and then I just came back from Aotearoa, New Zealand to work a little bit with Maori scholars. I won't have the time to go into that today, so I just decided to talk a little bit about what sustainability means or what we think about when we think about sustainability. And the first thing that I want, so the first thing is that we don't really have a general agreement on what sustainability means. The first definition of sustainability is from the Bertrand report that is at the end of the 80s, so I think it's 1987, which is a development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations, but it still has a very balanced idea of emphasizing socioeconomic growth, so development, because we are emphasizing the growth. And then in the past decades, we have been moving from that concept. Like if you look at, for example, at the European Green Deal, we are starting to emphasize a little bit more an idea of maintaining a balance of the ecosystems. So we have different ideas of sustainability, and I wanted to go into the detail of what it means: weak, strong, and moderate sustainability in general in the academic literature about that. So the first idea is the idea of weak sustainability. So weak sustainability is a framework that believes that human-made capital can actually replace natural capital. And in space, for me, it would mean understanding that we can always find technological solution if we create a problem in space. So we have space debris, we are finding technological solution to mitigate space debris. We have limited capabilities of observing the sky for astronomers because of satellite constellations. Then we find solution for mitigating satellite interference. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have an idea of strong sustainability. So according to strong sustainability, natural capital is irreplaceable. So we cannot just stack our way out of the problems that we are creating in space. And so it would mean actually recognizing the worth of the intrinsic value of the places that we are exploring, and understanding that some resources, some environments are irreplaceable. So we cannot just find technological solutions to solve the problems that we are creating. And the focus in this framework would be more on reducing our footprint, putting more restraints, and respecting the balance of the ecosystems that we are visiting. And then there is a moderate sustainability framework, which is a little bit in between the weak and the strong model. And moderate sustainability means acknowledging the need for growth, but still emphasizing there exist bounds in the environment in which we are operating, and so understanding how we can move within this environment, developing our activity, but still recognizing what are the limitations of the environment in which we are operating. And so it will mean planning carefully the development of our space activities and ensuring that we are not overwhelming the space environment, and we are still keeping the balance that exists there. Now, in one of the latest instruments that have been approved by the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space is the LTS guidelines, which is still a voluntary set of guidelines that have been a very powerful instrument for international diplomacy and for fostering sustainable practices in space, but that for me still shows a model of weak to moderate sustainability. So still there is an underlying understanding that we can infinitely go to space. We don't have LEO doesn't have really a quantifiable orbital capacity, so we can still send as many satellites as we want to space. And so while this is a very useful instrument, and it has been very useful in guiding the way in which national legislations are being implementing sustainability issues, or in the way in which we are guiding our activities in the future, I don't think it's a model that is really able to help us not replicating the mistakes that we did on Earth. And so I believe here that we should start reframing. It is a very idea far in the future. I don't think it's really feasible effectively now. but we should move towards an idea of strong sustainability. So we cannot fix everything with technological solutions, and we cannot just rely always on voluntary guidelines. So space is always seen as a final frontier, an infinite frontier, and it is not. It is a very fragile, finite ecosystem that is very much interconnected to Earth. And so if we want to move forward in a more sustainable way in space, we need really to adopt an approach, a governance approach that relies on, is able to respond to challenges dynamically, but also holistically. So not just looking at specific places, but looking at more generally at the system that is between Earth and space, in a way in which we are really valuing the balance of the ecosystem, the resilience of the ecosystem, and share responsibilities of all the stakeholders. Okay, and I think I'm done. Yeah, I added some references. The last one is an article that we recently published on nature sustainability that touches upon a little bit of the things that I've mentioned before, so I can share it with you if you want it. And I think I'm done. Thank you. Yes.
Is this on? Is it working?
It's just for video.
Oh. For somebody that works at a NGO focused on space sustainability, this was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for it, and especially when you're talking about strong sustainability. Mm-hmm. I want to know if you have any opinions or if you've heard this phrase orbital carrying capacity.
Yeah.
And what are your reactions to even the investigations of orbital carrying capacity?
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit before at the table. I think there are studies to understand what is the orbital capacities of, for example, low Earth orbit. We don't have an idea of what that means, but I don't believe that just because we don't know how many satellites we can place into the orbit, we should just keep sending satellites until it's completely crowded, because at a certain point the orbital capacity will finish, and we don't have to wait until we know, or it is just like too late for us to understand what was the orbital capacity before we sent. Like Antonino, I think, mentioned that during the sustainability conference at ITU, they mentioned that our plan 1 million satellites to be sent before 2040. And so do we really want to send 1 million satellites to low Earth orbit just because we don't know how much space we actually have? I don't think so. That's why strong sustainability should be focusing on really, let's understand what are the things that we need in space, because of course we need satellite applications, we need satellites, but how many satellites do we need, and how many satellites we can send before we are making irreplaceable damages like we did on Earth? And if you look at the UN report, Our Common Agenda from a few years ago, there are maps that are showing how we have been catastrophically destroying environments on Earth, so atmospheric pollution, oceans, and for the first time space debris was indicated of like one of the problems that we have been creating that could be irremediable if we don't start looking at it very soon.
So just expanding on that, given the history of capitalism on Earth and the failure for systems and processes that incentivize sustainability, what is your tweet-length hope for the rise of capitalism, commercial space sector?
So I am very radically thinking that we should have a complete shift in the way in which we approach space, so shift from our anthropological perspective in the way in which we approach space. We just think about problems in space as long as they affect humans, so we think about space debris just as long as it is a problem for collisions, while we should start thinking about what I was mentioning before about something that has value, as worth it just because it's worth it of its preservation. Like the moon is important just because it's an environment that was like that, and we're deciding to operating on it and changing its features because we believe we can do it. And we think about not doing that just if it affects activities that are next to each other or that can affect other human activities in the future. So I think that we really need like a very strong shift. That's why it's very hard thinking about it. But for example, I'm studying a lot with indigenous scholars and the indigenous frameworks for managing the environment, because on Earth, 80% of biodiversity is protected within 5% of the land that is the land of indigenous people. So this means that Western ways of using the environment, of managing nature, are probably not the best models. And if we want to do things differently in space, on the moon, and farther, we need to start thinking about other ways. And yeah, I don't know practically how we can do it, but just thinking about it is a first step, probably.
I've got a tweet-length version for it. We're going to cap the carrying capacity of the Earth at 10 billion, and any additional humans beyond that point will have to be managed to orbit.
Right. So build a wall is what I
Thank you so much, Giuliana.
Thank you. And this.
Of our topics. All right, next one up we have Luis. Last but not least, in this round of presentations, before you guys get to work it out amongst yourselves.
I can hear right now.
All right, come on up on stage. You've been clipped already? Not yet.
Here we go.
You will be
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll put my timer so I don't pass.
Great. Oh, also, by the way, to scroll, you scroll. Like
Scroll.
this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. All right, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks to Foresight and Open Lunar for having me. I'm a first timer, and first to thank you to everyone here, because everybody's been very welcoming. So I appreciate that. My name is Luis Zia. I'm a recovering research professor in bioastronautics from the University of Colorado Boulder, and the founder of Jaguar Space. It's a one-person, 9-month-old company. I've had 15 customers, including NASA, so that means I haven't slept much. And that's my excuse if I make silly mistakes here. So I'm going to start with just a very brief intro. And like most space stories, this one starts with scuba diving and bacteria.